don't know, I already have a system that has 8,800 watts, and it's on the garage roof. So I've already got the whole system battery backed, and I'm just adding 4,440 watts onto a ground mount system. Okay, so we're going to be adding that on. So the point of this is to extend my solar day. I want to get power later in the day, so I'm pointing this a little bit to the west, and I'm putting it at a place that gets sun later in the day, and mostly during the winter months is when I have a problem. During the summer, the sun's straight up overhead and we get sun all day. It's not a problem, but that's just a close-up of the existing system. You can pause that if you want to take a look. And here's what I'm adding. So I got this panel out here. It's about 14 feet by 20 feet. I got the combiner box right at the panel, and then I'm running 130 feet of combined power up to the same power wall that I already have. Take a look at that. I'm just adding one PT100. I already have 2 of them. And this whole system is so easy to scale. I mean, I think you can put up to 8 of these on here. And everything else is just the same, pretty much. I have like 40 or 50 videos that show step by step the entire process of how I built that original system, and I describe this whole diagram and a bunch of other stuff in that. You can look under my playlist. You'll find it under solar power. So this is the this shows basically how I selected the wire and the breakers that I used, and I've updated this a little bit, but I just look at how much current is in there, if it's in an attic, if it's in conduit, and you figure out what, you know, what size wire you need and so on. And this is what I actually picked for all these different things. I'll be using a lot of the same stuff. I'm going to skip over all this for now. Yeah. All right, so a little more detail on the panels. I got 12 of these quantum panels, the Q-Peak LG 4.2. It's a 370 watt panel. I think I paid about 60 cents a watt for these. I think there's stuff out there now you can get for 50 cents a watt. It's a year later now. Anyway, there's all the details here. It's 72 cell. We'll get into that later. We're going to use that to size the number of, oh, and it's later. Here we go. So I've got this spreadsheet that I wrote, and I'll link it. You can download it if you want from the link. Use at your own risk. Try 3 and 4. Okay, now we're up. This is what I'm going to do, by the way. So it's 159.9 versus 187. So I still got a cushion of 27 volts. And I look at my currents, I'm 76 versus 100, so I got a 23 cushion there, and I'm under my max watts by 2,000. So design check says fine, go ahead and build that. Now let's try, what if we had 6 strings? By the way, in parallel ups the current. So you see how the current went off the chart now, right? It's over 100, and that's a problem. You can't build that. So let's go back to 4. And what if we went 6 in series? Okay, that affects the voltage. Now we're at 319 volts, way too high. That's not going to work. So we're going to go back down to 3. No problem. Anyway, you can play with that and help design your system. All right, so let's look at the ground mount racking system. I'm using the IronRidge. So what you're going to do is go out and buy, you're going to source your own pipe, right? Get it locally. There's no reason to have them ship it from IronRidge. But what you're going to get from IronRidge are all these connectors, like this guy, the rail connectors, and all the rails, and everything you need to fasten your panels down. That's the IronRidge racking system. So we'll take a little closer look at that in a minute. I'm going to do a 4 up, 4 in parallel, 3 in series. That's how it's going to be laid out on the, this is how it's going to be wired schematically. Some more details about how it's in the ground. I want a 30-degree angle because of my latitude, and I would go higher angle than that if I wanted to max out the amount of power, but like I said, in the summertime I got plenty of power. So I really want to use this more in the wintertime, so I'm going to lower my angle a little bit down to 30. I think that'll serve me better. So it just shows, you know, how high each post has to be, how deep it has to be into the ground, the size of the holes. Notice there's a space under each pole where you got concrete under the pole. So you're not just dropping that in the ground. There's a space under it. 6 feet deep, 1 foot 8 inches in diameter. They're 7 foot 6 apart and 12 foot spaced this way. So 12 feet here, 7-6 here. This is just for my situation. 3 foot 10 overhang. Now all this stuff goes through a design assistant on IronRidge's site, and they check it, all the engineering for the wind loading, the uplifts, and they make sure that I have everything I need, the sizing, all the connections, that this thing will withstand 130 mile an hour, hurricane force winds, because we're in hurricane land. So you'd plug in all your own information and it would tell you what you need. These are just more details on the components. The rails are XR1000, 100, and the 10. The 1000s are more for ground mount. So that's what I'm using. The 100s and the 10s are more for roof racking. They're just smaller. These things aren't cheap, but they're strong, and all the engineering's done. It should do what it's supposed to do. Okay, so like I said, you get your own pipe. This is not tubing. This is structural steel, Schedule 40, hot roll pipe. It's heavy, it's expensive. 3-inch diameter. Only thing I don't like about it is it rusts. This is the combiner box. It's just a look inside and out here. Now this will take up to 6 breakers, 150 volt breakers, or 3 of the 300 volt breakers, because if you do a 300 volt breaker, it's basically a double. So you put 2 of these together, you get a 300 volt. So 6 150s or 3 300s. It's just on the charge controllers, the PT100. Here are the specs, 200 volts plus the battery voltage. So the max voltage you can put into it's like 240, but it won't run at that voltage. It'll kick off at 187. You'll find that if you're close to that, you can sometimes, this happens to me twice a year, when I have a real cold morning and real bright sun, it's the perfect angle. It'll just crank up to about 191 volts, and then my system will shut off for about half an hour while it warms up. But not a big deal, twice a year. But it is a design point. If you're always over it, your system's never going to run. But that's what that spreadsheet's for. I got all this stuff from the Alti store. I am an affiliate with them. I think they're a great store, and I'll leave a link to all these parts down in the description. I also have it in another form, like a spreadsheet, if it's easier for you to read. But you can pause this, check it out, look at all the prices, the quantities, check out everything I got. It came out to $4,000 after my tax credit. That was for 4,500 watts added to my system. So anyway, I'm going to go through all this stuff, so let's get started. Okay, first up we got the IronRidge XR ground mount bonded rail connector. 12 of these, 12 of these. Okay, next up we got the IronRidge top cap for 3-inch pipe. So we got 4 of those. Each one has 2 of these bolts, U-bolts. Check. Okay, and we have IronRidge 24 of these rail bolts. They go in here. Bolt the rails on. Okay, these are the 15 amp, 150 volt DIN rail mounted breakers that go in the combiner box. Got 4 of them. This is the 50 amp, 300 volt breaker that gets you from the combiner into the charge controller. And this is the 100 amp, 150 volt breaker that gets you from the charge controller out to the system. Alright, this is the MidNite Solar MNPD6 combiner box. Looks like that. There it is. Got okay, nice. Okay, next up we got the MidNite Solar 300 volt surge protector. Looks like this. Very nice. Goes on the combiner box. Okay, these are the extension cables for hooking up the solar panels to the combiner box. They got the MC4 connectors, male and female. We'll be cutting these as needed to wire up all 12 panels. You got 4 circuits in parallel, 3 in series. Okay, here are the 12 Q-cell 370 watt mono solar panels, 750 pounds. Barely got it off the truck with my Kubota pallet forks, but we got it. And these are the IronRidge XR1000 rails. Got 6 of these. Probably take a couple of them out of the box just to make sure they're not bent. No problem. Yep. There it is. She's a beauty. Put that right up next to the other 2. Alright guys, so that's all the parts that I used to build the ground mount system. I'll leave links down in the description. And next up we're going to get right into the layout and the dig. Roughly in the middle of where the panel's going to go, and I'm looking due south. And if I wanted to get the most power, I'd orient it due south, but I can change that angle. So I can angle it back this way and get more power in the evening, and that's what I'm trying to do. So, you know, this over here, that's due west, and then right about here is the middle. That'd be 45. But I'm gonna come back a little more towards south. This is a little arbitrary. You know, the more south you go, the more power you get. The more I angle it this way to the west, the more power I'll get in the evening. So it's a little bit of a compromise. And I'm going to be, it looks like probably 25 to 30 degrees off of due south. Alright, so let's measure this thing up. Alright guys, so I got that top piece and the bottom piece are parallel. They're 12 feet apart. So that guy up there and this one down here, 12 feet apart. And then on the sides they're 7'6" and 7'6" over here. And then I measured the diagonals are 14 foot 1.5 inches. So that's square. At this point it doesn't even really have to be perfect, because all we're doing now is digging 20-inch diameter holes, and there'll be some wiggle room in there once we put the pipes in. And that's when we need to measure it tight and make sure that those pipes are set in concrete perfectly square. It is. I've marked it out a little more so you can see, you know, how big it's going to be. It's pretty big, a little bigger than I was expecting. Alright guys, so you see how my shadow is lined up pretty much with the angle of the panel? Well, it's 2:30 in the afternoon, So this thing is perfect angle at 2:30 in the afternoon. It's January 25th. And I don't know if you can tell, but that panel is just getting closed out. Probably it's about 80% shaded at 2:30. Another half an hour and that'll be fully shaded. That's when this guy, I need it to kick in at its best. Alright guys, so here's the setup. We got a 21-foot long Schedule 40 structural steel pipe here. Got my ground over there, and I'm going to use the plasma torch to cut it on this line, which is roughly in half. So there'll be a couple of 10.5 footers roughly. Got the setup over here. It's the titanium, 29 amps. Got the air supply over here, compressed air from a pull down. Give you the little tour here. So where it's coming from, compressors at 92 psi. Got 200 psi in the tank. Got the dryer and filter regulator. That's what sets the pressure up there. So we're all set to go. Let's give it a cut. Alright, there you have it. She's hot. Looks pretty good. Not bad. Went right through it. And now we got our two pieces. These are the back side of it. 10.5 footers. So I'm going to go drop all these in the ground and we'll start hooking them up. Alright, I want to try one more thing before we put these in, and that is I'm going to cut a couple of pieces of rebar and then cut some holes down here and stick the rebar right through there, and that should help hold that steel pole into the concrete tighter. Alright guys, I got all the pipe cut to length. I went ahead and drilled it out, put some rebar in there for extra strength in the concrete. And so my next step now is I'm going to drop these pipe into the holes, just drop them all the way down to the dirt, and then I'll attach the top horizontal bars with these top caps. This is what I get from IronRidge, so we'll put these on there, get it all attached. We'll do the back first, the high bar on the north side. So I'll just raise that up to the right height and then level it out, and then we'll build scaffolding to hold it there. Once that's set, then we'll move on to the front. So let's get going. Got this top cap. This goes right on here. That. Now we'll torque these down. I think it's 15 foot-pounds later, but for now I'm just going to get them snugged up. Okay, so I got all 4 posts in the ground. Now I'm going to lift up that back horizontal bar with the forklift and connect it to these 2 posts, and then we can build a scaffolding for it. This out. So that's close. I'm gonna have to let it go and start on this again tomorrow because I'm out of time for today, but yeah, that's pretty close to where it's gonna go. I'll build some scaffolding and get it right about into that position, and then we'll build off of that to get the front ones. All right, I'll see you tomorrow. Alright guys, so I got the back bar in place. It's level and it's centered on the holes. It's looking good. That's in good shape. So next, I got to start on the front bar, put that across there. It's a little more difficult because I have to get it not just level, but it has to be perfectly parallel to the back bar. Otherwise the panel's going to look screwed up. So, it'll be a little more difficult, but let's get started. Alright guys, we're all set. It's straight, it's parallel, it is level, and it is ready for concrete. That's what we'll be doing on the next one. Alright guys, I just finished setting the two back posts in concrete just a little bit. Just at the bottom to hold it in place. So that's about 3 feet deep of concrete. 700 pounds. 700 pounds of hand mixed concrete there. That'll hold them in place. This thing is dead on level, and so once that's set, then I can work this around a little bit, and it's already pretty straight, but I can get it perfect, and then we'll get the truck in here. Okay, so I'm going to start with these rail connector U-bolts. These are 5 foot-pounds or 60 inch-pounds, which is about at the top of the scale of this fat wrench. So we're going to try using this guy. Doesn't take much for these guys. You don't want to bend this bracket. Tighten them evenly. You don't want to tighten one side all the way. Okay, next we're going to do the rail connector brackets. That's these guys here. And those are 21 foot-pounds. So let's see, starting at 0, we're going to go to 21 right there. Okay. These 3/16 top cap Allens are 20 foot-pounds. That's quite a bit. There we go. Of course, it's got to hold. I mean, there's a couple thousand pounds of cement. This thing's got to hold it. There we go, 20 foot-pounds. I think I'll do the PT100 and all the wiring for that, and then the one after that we'll do the combiner box, and then we'll do a launch and some performance. All this wire in here. Okay, so I got the bracket up straight and level. Went ahead and punched the holes through there. Here you can see the blanks that came out of it. Got this ready to go. Punched out the holes there, and I'm gonna put a couple of these in and we'll mount it up. Alright, there it is. Got it in place. Just missing one of these guys. I'll have to pick one up. But it's in place, ready to go. So next step is pull the wire. Okay, so I've got all this opened up, and I drilled a hole here. That's where the wires are going to come up through here, through this guy, and that'll get me into my cable tray. So I cut this big hole that'll allow me to work down in here and help get the wires through. So let's take a look outside. Okay, so the power will come from the panel down there through conduit buried in the ground here. I've got some other things coming up too, but they're all going to come up here. The power panel is on the other side of this wall. So basically, this is the conduit that'll have the solar wires, the ground and the common. I'll come up, I'll put this guy on here, drill a hole and get into the wall, pull the wires on through and hook them up. There'll be 2 more of these, chicken coop power, chicken coop video. So I get to do all this stuff at the same time. Alright guys, quick update. Got all my power going into the wall. Alright, so we're back inside. I just have a few wires to hook up here to get my new PT100 online. Just a wire from here, one of the grounds, a stacking cable, set the dip switches, retorque everything, then we can button it up and this side will be done. So getting close. Alright guys, thought I'd go into a little detail here for those folks who are actually trying to build something like this. So in this case I've just added the third PT100 controller. So let's just talk about that. We've got the combined PV from the array. This is the ground mount array, is right here. We've got DC negative, DC positive, and the ground. We'll start with the ground. That's a green wire, comes in, goes directly into the PT100 bus bar right here, comes out of that bus bar, comes around here, drops down, and comes into this main grounding system. And from there it goes back to the main panel of the house, and that's where it's connected to the common. And that's the only place it's connected to the common, so there aren't any ground loops. Okay, so now we have the PV negative, the white wire. It comes in and goes directly into the PT100 on the PV negative. Okay, right here. So that's easy. And we got the PV positive, the red wire, does not go directly into the PT100, but it comes over here to a breaker, so we can break that. It's a 300 volt breaker at 50 amps. It'll probably actually run about 150 volts. So that's this guy. It's on the plus side. Okay, coming in. If it was on, it would be then coming out and going right up into our PV positive input. So now we got the plus and the minus hooked up. So now the charge controller is going to take that power, same amount of power is coming out, but now it's at a much lower voltage, probably around 56 volts. So we had a number 6 wire coming in because we're higher voltage. Now we need a number 4 wire coming out. Okay, so we're going to drop out with the negative. That'll go to the negative battery bus bar that's on the top side of the shunt. You can see it underneath there. That's grounded. And then the plus side comes out, rolls over here to the 100 amp breaker, 150 volts. So lower voltage, higher current. Right? Comes in the top. If that's on, then that's going to take you right into the plus side of the battery. So that's connected to the battery. That's the bus bar for the battery. All right. So that's basically it. Now let's talk about the stacking, right? So these are all working together. They're connected, they're communicating, they're working together. You have a master and 2 slaves, right? So the way you select that is through the dip switches. Now dip switch 10 has to be up on all 3 of them. That indicates that it's a stacking system. Then you look at dip switches 7, 8, and 9, and that sets the address. Okay, the lowest address is the master. You look at this, the master is the only one that has a network cable. See, no network, no network, network. The master is the only one that communicates to the inverter. So it communicates to the inverter over here, the master inverter, that communicates to the controller. The 2 slaves only communicate to the master. All right, so that's why they don't have a network cable. So how does this one communicate? It uses this stack port. So there's a stack port here. This guy runs over to this one. And then you can see it's a dual stack port. That one runs all the way over to this guy. All right. So if you're wondering why did I put the master in the middle, it's because it used to be here, but that function broke on this PT100. Doesn't work. So I had to make him the master now, and those are the two slaves. Okay, so what else? If you're not using an external ground fault, you're using the internal ground fault on these PT100s, then only the master can have its fuse in it. You have to remove the fuse here and remove the fuse here because it can only be connected to ground at one point. All right, so that's basically it. Let's just talk a minute about these breakers. We'll go from left to right. This is the battery monitor kit. All right, little 2 amp, and then 1, 2, 3. These 3 are all from the outputs of the PT100. 1, 2, 3 outputs, right? Higher amps, lower voltage. These are the inputs from the solar panels combined to PV from the arrays. So they're higher voltage, lower current. And that goes up into the PT100s. So, I mean, basically it looks real complicated, but it's actually pretty simple. It's not rocket science. Not bad at all. So, I think I've got everything in place. I'm going to go ahead and fire it up, even though I don't have my panels hooked up yet on that third PT100. The rest of the system should work, and when I eventually get the panels on, we'll be generating power from that too. Alright guys, let's take a little closer look at our combiner box from MidNite Solar. So the purpose of this thing is to combine the different strings of solar. In my case I've got 4 strings of 3, so that's each breaker will be a string of 3 panels, right? So I got 4 of them. If we look inside here, what do we got? We got a DIN rail. That's where all our breakers are going to go. Across there. That'll be the combined DC positive. This is the DC negative bus bar, and we have a ground bar over here. So this guy here, let's see if you can see that. That goes in there like that. See? And that combines the DC positive. So basically these are on here. Just clip right on here. There's a little yellow tab that'll lock it into place. These are 150 volt DC breakers. You can put 6 of them in here, or you can put 3 of the 300 volt breakers because they're doubles. And like I said, this goes in here like this. That'll screw down in the terminals, and there's your combined DC positive. Alright, you see that? Alright, so this guy will be mounted on the pole down there of the ground mount. To get in the box, I've got this is a 1 1/4 inch hole right here. 1 1/4 inch connector. I got this little ring. Tighten that down like that. See there? Then I'm coming up with 1 inch conduit. So I'm going to put this reducer in the bottom. So now a 1 inch conduit will fit in here, and that'll get our wires inside. Alright. Now, in my case, I've got these 3 wires coming up, like so. See that? Alright, so what happens? The earth ground will go over here. Put that on that guy. The DC negative goes to the DC negative bus bar. And this is the combined positive. DC positive will go up into that guy. Like that. Alright, so let's get this thing mounted and get it wired up. Got it all the way from my power panel in conduit through the cement into the combiner box. And I just gotta wire that up. These cutters, these things are great. There we go. Look at that. I'll go there. I'll go up there. I'll go right there. Right here. Okay, so I've got my DC positive, my DC negative, and my ground all set. My breaker's in place. This is wired all the way back through conduit to the power wall. So, next, just gotta bury all this up, finish my power wall, then I come out, set my rails and panels, and we'll be in business. Alright guys, so you see all the wires hanging here from all the panels. So the idea is we gotta put all these together and bring them back to this combiner box. So basically the bottom row is a string, and then the second row is a string, and the third row is a string, and the fourth row is a string. So we got 4 strings of 3. So all I'm going to do is go jump from here to here to here, and then bring him back. Same thing, from here to here to here, bring that back, and so on. Alright guys, got it all wired up. It's all set to go. Everything comes back to the combiner box. Got the DC negatives into the bus there. Got the DC positives into the breakers. They're all combined. Also went ahead and put the surge protector on there. It's all wired in. So we're all set. In the next one, we'll go ahead and fire this up and see how it works. Alright guys, it's 7 a.m. and sun should be coming up shortly over here. Wired this all up last night when the sun was down. And here we go. Okay, now we're at 120.7. So I'm going to go ahead and flip these breakers on for the first time. That brings power up to the power wall. We'll go check it up there and then we'll switch it on if everything looks good. Should I pull that panel off real quick? Probably should. Well, let's go for it. Throwing the switch up. I got power to that. There you go. Look at that. 10 watts. Charging. So far so good. It's better than fire. Alright guys. All 3 of them are charging. Got 20 watts coming in on my new panel. And the sun is just starting to come up. Alright, it's about 7:30. Got 108 volts on the new panel with it hooked up. Gotta clean some of this up. Alright, it's about 7:45 in the morning. We got 180, 180, and 110 watts coming in on the 3 PT100s. Burning through about 1800 watts in the house, negative 28 amps, 86% state of charge. So far it's working good. Everything looks fine. And working like it's supposed to. Okay, it's 8 a.m. and got some fog out there, so this is basically ambient light. We got 400, 400, 310. They're all about the same size panel, by the way. The new panel's slightly more, but it's angled to the west, so it doesn't have any direct sunlight on it yet. Alright guys, about 8:40 in the morning, and the clouds have rolled in, so this is all ambient light now. Ambient light. This is what we're getting. Let's take a look. About 9:30 and the sun just popped out for a second from behind the clouds and they all shot up to about 2K. Oh, here come the clouds again. But wow, that was cool. Oh, a little more sunshine. Look at that. Hit 2500 there for a second. 2500 watts. There it is again, almost. Alright guys, it's about 3:30 or so later in the day, and this is exactly why I added this ground mount, because the main two arrays combined are about 1000 watts, whereas that ground mount is cranking out 3000 watts still. So it's holding up the fort, and it's working exactly like I'd planned. Yep, pretty happy about the way this is going so far. Okay, so now it's about 4 o'clock, and we've got about 600-700 watts on the main panel, but the ground mount is cranking out over 3000 watts. So we're really holding on, extending our day with that ground mount. Sweet. Guys, we are 4:45 p.m. Look at that. 300 watts on the main panel and still 2,150 watts on that ground mount. That is really stretching out the day for me. Really happy about that. And I've had everything on. Still have everything on. Running 3 air conditioners, pool pump, water heater, lights, TVs, computers. A bunch of stuff. This is really going to be great. Game changer for sure. I mean, it doesn't seem like much. I mean, okay, so we're going from 2 o'clock to 5 o'clock, right? 3 hours. But I mean, really only had, say, 10 to 2 or 9 to 2. It's only had 5 hours. So that's a pretty big percentage gain. A lot more we can do with that. Definitely happy about this move. It was only $4,000, which might seem like a lot, but for what we're getting, I mean, if the power were to go out, this is going to really up what we can do in a long-term power outage. Alright guys, it's 5 p.m. and we're down to about 1,000 watts, and it's dropping off pretty quick. The shade has finally hit that ground mount. We're losing current out of our battery. I mean, it'll be sunset in an hour and a half, so we've done pretty good. Stretching it out to 5 o'clock, picked up an extra 3 hours. And during the day, there's so much power coming in, I'm going to have to change some of the things we're doing to take advantage of that. Might even put in another air conditioner. Who knows? But it's looking really good. I'm happy with it. Thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next one.